Holy Week deserves a grand celebration. What we commemorate tonight and tomorrow and Saturday and into Sunday morning has changed the world forever. And so it deserves all of the energy that we give to it, all of the beautiful things that we do to worship and to celebrate and to remember are really important. Tonight, Jesus shares a last meal with his disciples, a meal where he gives them a new covenant and a meal where he gives them a new commandment that they love one another. Then as they depart from that place, Judas goes to betray Jesus to the religious leaders, and Jesus and his other disciples go to Gethsemane. They go to pray, and Jesus is in agony as he prays, asking that the Lord would let this cup pass from him, and his disciples are falling asleep. As the night continues, Jesus is betrayed with a kiss. He's arrested. He's taken to the government officials where he's given a fake trial, and they accuse him of blasphemy, and they condemn him to death. They release Barabbas, a prisoner who's incited rebellion. Rather than Jesus, he gets to escape while Jesus is condemned to a death that he does not deserve. From there, he's beaten, he's whipped, he's tortured and mocked. He's forced to carry his cross to Golgotha, and there he is crucified. He's mocked as he's on the cross. People challenge him to come down from the cross if he really is the Messiah, if he really is the Son of God, if he really is the King of the Jews. They say now is the chance for him to show his power. But as everyone else makes fun of him, it seems like creation itself cries over what is happening to the Lord of life. The sky turns black, the earth quakes, the rocks crack, the veil in the temple is torn in half. The whole world seems to know that something horrible is happening to Jesus, the Son of God, the King of the Jews. As he dies, people begin to recognize who he is. The centurion confesses his faith in Jesus, and Jesus is taken down from the cross, and he's laid in a new tomb. He remains in the new tomb through Saturday, a dark and confusing day for the disciples as they lock themselves in the upper room. And on Sunday morning, when the women show up to care for Jesus' body after observing the Sabbath, they're told that he's not there. These events have changed the world, and they deserve all of the attention that we can give them. They deserve the celebration of an egg hunt and gathering for worship in bright pastel colors and singing songs of jubilation. But this year, we're not going to get to gather together in person. We're not going to get to sing those songs all together. We're not going to get to see one another's beautiful Easter clothing. And that's a shame. But it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to remember that the first Holy Week, the time when Jesus was betrayed and crucified and laid in the tomb, it didn't have all of the pomp and circumstance. In fact, it was filled with a lot of confusion for the disciples, and it was otherwise a simple observance of the Passover. Jesus takes simple things. He takes bread and he takes wine, the most common thing that people would have drunk other than water. You might as well have taken a Coca-Cola. And he says, "These things are signs for you of the new covenant that I am establishing with you by my death. And with my death comes a new law, a new commandment that I'm giving to you, that you serve one another." And he does something incredibly simple. He takes off his clothing and he picks up a towel and a bowl of water and he washes the disciples' feet. Peter knows that he's not worthy for Jesus to wash his feet, and Jesus tells them as much, that Jesus has been their Lord, and yet he's showing them what it means to be a servant. And he invites us as well to begin to love in that way, to love one another with a servant's heart. So tonight I encourage you to set your minds on Jesus and to remember the things that Jesus has done for us, both by showing us how to love and serve, by calling us to love one another, and by, through his death and resurrection, establishing a new covenant for us and for everyone across the globe, that we can know that God wants to be in relationship with us and that he will stop at nothing to show us his love and to offer us his grace. I hope that tonight you remember these things. I hope that you remember how simple the disciples' observance was and how confused they were after he died, wondering, what in the world are we going to do next? And as they sat there waiting alone in the upper room, and as we are in our own homes, locked up, separated from everyone else, in fear of death, I hope that we can acknowledge the confusion and the isolation that the disciples were experiencing as they had locked their doors in the upper room, trying to stay away from everyone else for fear that they might die. I hope that our isolation and separation and the simplicity of our observance of Holy Week this year lets us walk with the disciples a little bit more closely. Lets us remember what it was like for Jesus to be alone as he faced his accusers and as he was tortured and as he was placed on the cross. And I hope we can remember what the disciples experienced as well, as we live separate from one another and in fear of what the world has to offer us. And in the midst of that, I hope that we can claim our faith that is sure in Jesus and that is sure that God never leaves us or forsakes us, and is sure that the life that Jesus offers us is eternal and everlasting and cannot be taken from us by anything that this world has to offer. I hope that you remember the simplicity of this week, and I hope you remember the confusion of this week as we await the bright joy that comes on Sunday morning. Have a great night. Amen.